Welcome to Session 3. This session will provide you with a detailed description of the ESCAP Digital and Sustainable Regional Integration Index, DigiSRII. This session is split into 3 parts. We begin with Part 1, which will discuss the conceptual framework of DigiSRII, as well as provide a detailed explanation on the dimensions and indicators that comprise it. We will also discuss the methodology used in constructing the index. As highlighted in Session 2, DigiSRII builds on existing work on regional integration indices, notably those by ECA and ADB, to develop a regional integration index that can better integrate the digital and sustainable development dimensions of regional integration policies. In contrast to other existing regional integration indices, it is characterized by a matrix structure, including dimensions for digital economy as well as sustainable integration. While the digital dimension is one of 7 distinct sectoral dimensions, the sustainable dimension is mainstreamed through each of the 7 sectoral dimensions, with sustainable integration indicators supplementing the conventional integration indicators found in earlier studies. Examining the structure of DigiSRII presented here, it is important to highlight that our approach, while providing a single comprehensive measure of regional integration, also allows regional integration to be evaluated from multiple perspectives. For example, integration can be evaluated solely from a sustainable or conventional perspective across all 7 dimensions, or on the other hand, overall integration in a particular dimension can be examined in detail. The list goes on, thus allowing for flexible evaluation of regional integration depending on changing requirements. A comprehensive and a simplified version of DigiSRII have been developed owing to issues in data availability. The comprehensive version, which is more data intensive, covers 13 of the 53 regional ESCAP member and associate member states. The simplified version, which only features a subset of indicators in DigiSRII for which data is available, covers 24 economies in Asia and the Pacific. Both versions include all 7 dimensions covering conventional and sustainable integration and cover the period 2010 to 2017. However, the simplified index is comprised of only 42 indicators, while the comprehensive is comprised of 53. We now move to discussing the dimensions and indicator framework of DigiSRII. We begin with trade and investment integration. A major element of deepening integration is removing barriers to trade and investment between regional partners. Conventional indicators under this dimension focus on intra-regional intensity of both trade and investment flows, as well as barriers to regional trade. Increased intensity of trade and investment between an economy and its regional partners, as well as reduced tariffs between an economy and its regional partners, reflects deeper integration. Sustainable integration from the perspective of trade and investment entails participation in the regional trading system in a manner that supports long-term domestic and regional economic growth, environmental protection, and social development. In addition to helping achieve economic SDGs such as SDG 1, 8, and 9, removing barriers to regional trade and investment is part of SDG 17 relating to partnership and can be targeted on sectors relating to environmental goods, which will support the achievement of environmental related SDGs. Increased regional trade and investment, also if associated with higher domestic value added and employment, will also bring desirable outcomes towards achieving SDG 8 and 9, that is, economic growth and industry and innovation. We now move to the second dimension of DigiSRII, financial integration. Financial integration is a phenomenon that financial markets in national and international economies are closely linked together. This may be through cross-border capital flows, participation of foreign investors from the region in domestic financial markets, and information sharing among financial institutions in the region. The process tends to cause a convergence of asset prices and yields across borders. Therefore, indicators under this dimension capture the extent of regional holdings of financial assets and how closely the financial market of an economy is linked with intra-regional financial markets. Deeper integration would show as increased intra-regional flows of capital and greater synchronization between financial markets in those economies. Although financial integration potentially supports an economy in achieving higher economic growth, the growth may not be sustainable if the integration brings in higher macroeconomic volatility. Financial integration can be positively associated with more macroeconomic volatility, especially if domestic financial development lies below a threshold level. Hence, to ensure that financial integration will bring sustainable economic growth, that is SDG 8, we conceptualize sustainable financial integration as the situation that openness and regionally interconnected financial markets are not accompanied by excessive volatility, while also tending to increase domestic level of financial development. We now move to the third dimension of DigiSRII, regional value chain integration. RVCs involve the division of roles between regional economies in performing a wide range of activities and services that a product or service must undergo, from conception to commercialization. The overall goal is producing and providing products to consumers while minimizing costs. Participating in RVCs requires deeper integration to facilitate coordination, cooperation, and convergence of an economy and its regional partners around projects and industries of common interest. Ability to participate in RVCs increases if the economy has a high degree of trade complementarity with regional economies involved in RVCs. In addition, economies increasing their participation in RVCs tend to see increased intra-regional flows of intermediates through different stages of production. RVC integration potentially contributes to achieving SDGs 8 and 9. However, this requires management to minimize potential adverse impacts on the environment and maximize desirable outcomes on employment. Indicators under sustainable RVC participation consider trade complementarity in environmental goods exports by an economy to regional partners, which closely relates to environmental SDGs such as SDG 7, 12, 13, 14, and 15. In addition, it also considers domestic value added and employment associated with RVC participation relating to SDGs 8 and 9, as well as potential impacts on CO2 emissions, closely linked with SDG 13. This brings us to the fourth dimension of DigiSRII, infrastructure integration. Regional integration requires good connectivity through transport and telecommunication networks, as well as enabling regulatory conditions. Indicators for transport and telecom infrastructure include liner shipping connectivity index as well as quality of internet connectivity. The indicator reflecting enabling regulatory conditions is intra-regional trade facilitation implementation. In addition, decreased intra-regional trade costs represent overall improvement in intra-regional connectivity. Sustainable infrastructure integration can be defined as the strengthening of domestic and cross-border infrastructure with a focus on inclusive access. It is conceptualized to encompass the areas of inclusive access to electricity and internet, which are most relevant to achieving SDGs 7 and 9, as well as trade facilitation implementation directed towards small and medium-sized enterprises, agriculture, and women. This inclusive coverage and access to hard and soft infrastructure will broadly contribute towards achieving SDGs 2, 5, 9, 10, and 11. We now move to Dimension 5, movement of people. Deeper regional integration is often characterized by freer flows of people within the region, as opposed to simply the freer flow of goods. Conventional indicators for movement of people comprise measures capturing the intensity of intra-regional movement of physical persons as well as remittances. Greater movement of people in the region brings about sustainable development outcomes if it leads to better opportunities and working conditions for those regional migrants, which will be relevant for achieving SDG 8. However, quantifying these social outcomes is not straightforward. In this index, we use higher income, proxied by remittance per intra-regional migrant worker, as an indicator of better job opportunities. We will now move to discussing Dimension 6, Regulatory Cooperation. Regulatory cooperation refers to efforts to formulate and utilize common institutional arrangements and harmonize regulatory frameworks to deepen economic integration. For an economy, this translates into greater participation in institutional arrangements and diplomacy and convergence in regulatory frameworks. Therefore, conventional indicators under this dimension capture the extent of institutional arrangements, such as FTAs and IIAs, regulatory similarity, and diplomatic relations with regional partners. The sustainable regulatory cooperation is captured through the level of participation of an economy in institutional arrangements with sustainable provisions. These sustainable provisions include labor mobility, which relates to SDG 8, intellectual property rights, which relates to SDG 16, considerations for the environment, which relate to SDGs 7, 12, 13, 14, and 15, sanitary and phytosanitary measures and technical barriers to trade, which relate to SDGs 2, 3, 12, 13, 14, and 15, and technical cooperation, which relates to SDG 17. Furthermore, the quality of domestic legal institutions and risk of crime is considered to capture sustainable regulatory cooperation, as stronger institutions are more likely to promote more socially equitable outcomes from regional integration. These relate closely to SDGs 16 and 10. Regulatory harmonization focused on meeting SDGs is also considered. This brings us to the final dimension of DigiSRII, digital economy integration. Regional integration also requires policy streamlining in the digital economy. Digital economy integration entails the freer flow of digital goods and services across regional economies, as well as ICT products that facilitate this trade. Correspondingly, digital economy integration encompasses trade intensity in ICT products, access to and use of internet purchases, government policies relating to trade in ICT products, as well as government regulations on the flow of digital goods and services. Deepening digital economy integration is considered to involve increasing intensity of ICT good trade flows, increasing access to and use of online purchases, lowering barriers and streamlining digital trade policies with regional partners, increasing levels of network openness, and achieving greater regulatory similarity with regional partners. Integration in the digital economy is considered to bring about sustainable outcomes if security of online transactions, along with inclusiveness in access to the digital economy, is ensured. Sustainable digital economy integration is therefore conceptualized to encompass an economy's availability of secure internet servers, closely relating to SDG 9, households with internet access, relating to SDG 11, and share of female population with financial or mobile money accounts and using the internet to make purchases, relating to SDG 5. All of these also broadly contribute to achieving SDGs 8 and 10. We will now discuss the methodology used in constructing DigiSRII. We begin with the normalization approach used in constructing DigiSRII. DigiSRII uses panel min-max normalization. The minimum and maximum values for each indicator are calculated across all economies and time periods. Higher values indicate a higher level of integration. Panel normalization approach facilitates comparison of index values across economies and years. However, this approach comes with the caveat of requiring normalization of all indicators each time new data becomes available. For indicators that have a negative direction of change, that is, higher values indicating a lower level of integration, for example, the case of average tariffs on regional partners, the normalized indicator is adjusted taking additive inverse to have higher values indicating higher levels of integration. DigiSRII is calculated using equal weights. This means equal weights for all indicators within any given dimension, as well as equal weights for all 14 dimensions that comprise the composite index. Equal weighting tends to be a preferred approach when there is inadequate theoretical basis for giving different weights to different indicators or dimensions. Interpreting and tracking performance over time is also more straightforward with equal weighting. However, it can potentially overweight a dimension with higher number of indicators than others unless dimensional average scores are taken before aggregating them into a composite index. To minimize the statistical issues of equal weighting, indicators were pre-screened to avoid including highly correlated indicators in the dimensional indices. And secondly, average scores are calculated for each dimensional index prior to aggregating them into the composite index. Certain indicators included in DigiSRII suffer from missing data. This is for two main reasons: data not being reported annually and data not being reported for certain economies. For data not being reported annually, missing observations at the beginning or end of the sample period are filled in with the closest available observation, while missing data for periods between 2010 and 2017 are linearly interpolated. For bilateral data not reported by certain economies, mirror data is used to fill in missing observations. This brings us to the end of session 3, part 1. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in part 2.